Einhalb Ausbeutung in der globalen Wirtschaft messen.
There can be some very strong incentives or reasons to have some kinds of redistributive policy in order to diminish the exploitation and unequal relations that people have between each other. And we then, kept working on this idea and, found that it actually has wide applications. So not only can exploitation intensity be used to look at inequality within a country, either between individuals, between households, or other groups, it can also apply at the global level to look at inequalities between countries. I'm Jonathan Cogliano. I'm in the economics department at the University of Massachusetts at Boston. In the context of what we call imperialistic international relations, exploitation means that there are countries or a group of countries that have power over others. So there is what we could consider a core group of exploiter countries that are able, through lending capital to relatively less wealthy countries, they are able to extract transfers of surplus in order to basically exploit these relatively less wealthy countries on what we call the periphery. And so in terms of the whole idea of exploitation in imperialistic international relations effectively means that there are flows of labor between nations, and wealthy countries, by controlling capital, are able to extract more labor from the global economy than they themselves basically put in. The exploitation intensity index that I've developed with my frequent collaborators and co-authors, Roberto Veneziani and Naoki Yoshihara, we've developed this index over a series of papers. And what this measures is the labor that one puts into the economy versus what they basically get out, or the labor that they get out in terms of their own income. So the exploitation intensity index is a ratio of the labor one contributes, and by one this could be a household, it could be an individual, it could be a country. So it's how much labor one contributes to the economy versus the labor embodied in what they get out of it or their income. And when we talk about income, we're talking about both the sum of their labor income and their capital income that they might derive from owning wealth. And if one puts more labor into the economy than they get out, they are exploited. If one gets more labor out of the economy than they put in, they are an exploiter. In terms of the criticisms leveled at theories of exploitation, theories of exploitation are usually charged with being either overly metaphysical, incoherent, or given their history and connection to what's called the labor theory of value, where labor is seen as the source of all value created in an economy, they're usually seen as not relevant because there's a lot of doubt cast on that idea of the labor theory of value. So the measure of exploitation intensity, or the work that I've done on exploitation, serves as kind of a counter to this by showing that exploitation theories can be coherent, consistent, and they can be very empirically operational and relevant, especially in this, this particular paper and the series of papers kind of coming before it. We show how the exploitation intensity index is able to capture types of inequalities that exist in capitalist economies that other approaches to inequality cannot. So if one is an exploiter or considered an exploiter, they're extracting more labor from the economy than they put in. The way that that happens or occurs is by owning wealth or having capital. By owning wealth, one can derive capital income. If you can derive a lot of capital income, you can basically get more labor out of the economy than you put in. And so inequalities in wealth are going to be a key driver of exploitation, or what exploitation status looks like across an economy, whether it's an individual economy or if we're talking about the global economy and relations, exploitation between nations or countries. And so looking at inequality and exploitation not only captures what one contributes, what people contribute to the economy, in addition to market outcomes, right? Their income, the wealth that they have or to get out of the economy. Whereas a lot of traditional approaches to studying inequality focused on income and wealth inequality, we would see, or I would see these as focused more strictly or closely on market outcomes. So our exploitation intensity index allows us to develop this measure or approach to studying inequality that factors in contributions to the economy. And we're able to see or identify things or see inequality in a slightly different way by doing this, and it highlights some kind of key inequities of capitalism, we think. A popular answer for people who study the kinds of things that I do, it's usually that capitalism has to seem unsustainable based on all of the kind of contradictions or internal contradictions within it, and however, capitalism has seemed to be pretty resilient, even though it's, and as human history goes, it has not been here that long. We maybe haven't seen it through entirely yet, but I think we do, especially at this moment, we do see a lot of the tensions in capital, internal to capitalism or embedded in capitalism, that really emerge and can, disrupt people's lives in a lot of, really fundamental ways. And so we have to question whether, or does make one wonder whether this can go on, or how long this can go on without some kind of either correction or, people collectively deciding that we can alter the course of where we're headed. One of the key drivers of exploitation and how my co-authors and I study this is differential ownership of wealth, or the fact that wealth inequality exists. So because different people own different amounts of wealth and people relate to wealth or capital differently, this is the source, or what generates exploitative social relations. By owning wealth or controlling capital, some people are able to exploit others. They can get more out of the economy than they themselves put into it, and because in the context of international imperialistic international relations, this applies at the country level. So this would mean that certain countries are able to get more out of the global economy than they themselves put in, and this is based on global wealth inequalities that exist. So you could have capital-rich or relatively capital-rich countries, because they control capital and can lend to relatively less wealthy countries. They're able to have power over them, they're able to exploit them, and they're able to get more out of the economy than they put in. And this contributes to patterns of uneven development and kind of the traditional and unequal exchange in the kind of traditional sense, that where you have these unequal relations between countries that are really embedded in capitalism itself. Thinking about exploitation, or why people should care about this.
Dies ist eine Website, die dir hilft, dein englisches Lesen und Hören zu verbessern. Sie zerlegt Sätze per KI in leicht verständliche Wortgruppen. Mit dem Player kannst du Tempo, Pause und Rücksprung frei steuern, um jede Zeile zu verstehen. Die Seite bietet Übersetzungen in 20 Sprachen für barrierefreies Lernen. Gib einfach englist.com in deinen Browser ein und probiere es aus.